Horsepower, horsepower, horsepower. We are still talking about horsepower. Welcome back to episode of Inside the Lines. My name is Jet. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Yeah, that's the main story we're going to talk about in this episode is horsepower. Now, NASCAR and horsepower, those are two words that you would think should correlate very nicely. But in this NASCAR, if you mention the word horsepower to someone, you're probably not going to get a good reaction. Now, NASCAR has been cutting horsepower since 2015. They've just been cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting. Now we're down to 670 horsepower with the next gen car. Fans have been clamoring for more horsepower with these race cars. We see it at tracks like the short track specifically, and also the road courses where cars that have way too much downforce and not enough horsepower producing lackluster racing. Now, NASCAR and Goodyear specifically have been working effortlessly to try and come up with a package and a tire combination that can bring back the good days of the final years of the Gen 6 car when it was performing outstanding on the short tracks and road courses. Now, Martinsville last fall was a great stepping point. You know, Goodyear brought a much softer tire. We got some wear, but still, it still had that feeling of even when the tires wear for so long, they don't wear enough to the point where you start to see the comers and goers like what we saw during the final years of the Gen 6 era. And fans have been saying, you can do so much you can with the tire. We've already taken so much downforce. Give us horsepower. NASCAR's mindset has always been that horsepower is expensive. Steve Phelps, everyone on NASCAR has always been saying that horsepower is expensive. And we're now in the budget saving era of NASCAR where we're cutting costs on engines. We're also cutting costs on personnel. We're now down to almost bare bones with the amount of people that you have in a race shop, even how a car is built. No longer do you build your own car, you buy it now at a shop. So we're now in the cost cutting era. And horsepower, unfortunately, is a big part of that. But the reason why that NASCAR is doing this is because they want to attract new OEMs. Now, this logic can be further helped based on IndyCar situation. If you look at what's happening over in IndyCar, Honda is outright saying that if they cannot bring down the cost, if IndyCar can't bring down the cost of how much it is to build engines to be able to produce engines for all these race cars throughout the season, that they will be pulling out of the sport within a few years. And they did mention NASCAR as an option. Now, the reason why for this is based on ROI. What Honda is putting into IndyCar, they're not getting so much out of it. Now, obviously, if they put that money into NASCAR, they may get a better ROI. It's kind of similar to what you see in Formula One. Even though Formula One is so expensive, you're going to see a massive ROI in return. That's why Audi, also hearing that, Ford coming back to Formula One now you're getting all these new engine suppliers that want to get into F1 is because they could see a massive ROI in return. Now, what about NASCAR? NASCAR hasn't had a fourth OEM since 2012 with Dodge when they were basically forced to leave the sport. Now, NASCAR's mindset, I think, by trying to cut as much as they can, save as much money as they can to allow new OEMs to get in, I don't know if that's the right mindset because they've been doing this since 2015 and we haven't got a sniff of a serious OEM in question. Now, Honda always keeps appearing, and I feel like if NASCAR were to get a fourth OEM, it will be Honda, since they've been always appearing as possibility. What if rumors have been floated around with that car manufacturer? So it is a possibility that we could see maybe Honda now with this new revelation with them in IndyCar. We could possibly see them maybe be interested in joining the sport sometime down the line. But that's why NASCAR doesn't want to add any horsepower. However, if you ask the current OEMs of NASCAR, Toyota, Ford, and Chevrolet, they're basically saying the exact opposite of NASCAR. Because NASCAR, they don't want to touch horsepower. They're willing to do everything they can. Change the tire, change downforce, take stuff out of the car. They're willing to do everything but touch the engine. However, our current OEMs are saying that, yeah, we can add more horsepower. First, it was Doug Yates with Ford.
Yes, we could add more power, probably 50 to 100 horsepower with not a lot of expense. In my opinion, I think we do that pretty quickly. To go to 900 or 1,000, that's a whole nother discussion.
Then earlier today, the senior vice president of ECR Engines, Bob Fisher, who got on SiriusXM NASCAR radio and also said that we can add more horsepower.
We want all the horsepower we can get. And, these engines are capable of producing well over 900 horsepower. But I think to help the racing, if they wanted us to bump this power level up to say 750 horsepower, wouldn't be a huge tear up for the engine companies. We already have a package that we used to run engines multiple races with the seals on, and would feel quite comfortable doing that. But I know NASCAR, they don't really want to talk about it. They haven't really asked much of the engine companies. I know when they have asked us, we haven't been against it by any stretch of imagination. And I will say that I think that we could give these drivers more horsepower with an engine package that has already been validated to run, more than one race at a 750 horsepower level.
Now for Toyota, even though I wasn't able to get a direct quote from TRD, Denny Hamlin, who is an owner with a Toyota team, he said a few months ago when they were holding a test at Richmond trying to develop some new aero package for the short tracks, said that they can easily get at least around 100 horsepower back in the cars, which would put it around 770. So all right, now we have conflicting arguments. We have NASCAR saying that we're not going to touch engines, too expensive. OEMs are saying, yeah, we can add horsepower. Now obviously, if you want to make a dramatic change to the next gen car, you're gonna have to add a lot of horsepower, like what Tyler Reddick said on Door Bumper Clear's podcast.
It was one of those years in there we had all the horsepower and all the downforce. I was watching qualifying laps, and man, that was exhilarating to watch. Shoot, a couple months ago, just for fun, I asked some of the guys, 23 of them, let's just, there was a weird knob we could kind of work on to just basically increase the power of the car by, 150 horsepower. Didn't really change much. I mean, we're talking the amount of off throttle time was reduced very little.
Because
the lap
downforce
time
is so
dropped
high?
Very little. No, I don't think.
I think there's a lot of things added to it, isn't there?
The drag of the car, the min speed of the car. Like the car has a lot of scrub.
So how many horsepower would you need to make a difference?
I mean, a lot.
That's what I think.
I think you need to be above 1,000 horsepower to like.
I think that's the thing.
Really,
I think that
move that needle, and that is a.
That's a big jump.
To
go to that, I can believe
that. That can happen more short term.
Now, if you want to get 900, 1,000 horsepower, that's only going to happen if we go hybrid. I think that is something that NASCAR fans, we have to just acknowledge this. The only way you're getting 900, 1,000 horsepower is if we go hybrid. That's it. There's no way I think you can ever get a 900, 1,000 horsepower combustion engine. Now, I know that the engines are capable of running 900 horsepower, but I think the engine bill, I don't think they're going to want to, NASCAR is not going to want to be anywhere near that. Also, OEMs have stated that, yeah, we can add 100 so horsepower, but 900, 1,000 horsepower is a whole nother can of worms. So perfectly understandable. But the thing that just pisses me off, it really just gets on my nerves with NASCAR, is that they won't even try it. Try it. What does 1,000 horsepower in a next-gen car feel like? Because here's the thing. If the racing is great with a 1,000 horsepower engine, okay, now you have a baseline. Okay, now when you know that 1,000 horsepower can work on a next-gen car, you can then maybe look at, okay, how do we make it so that it is cost-effective? Work with the OEMs. How do you make it so that it is cost-effective? Maybe use that to prepare for a hybrid engine so that when it does come out, because it will come out with the next-gen car, the next-gen car is capable of having a hybrid engine in it. You can already work on that, work already on how much horsepower you want in that car so that when it does come out, it's ready to go. And we're not going to have any issues with short tracks, road courses, or anything like that. I think that's the thing that annoys me so much with NASCAR is that they won't even try. They're willing to try, again, everything with tires. And I think tires will play a big role. Getting rid of shifting, that also matters. They've done a great job, I think, of trying everything but horsepower. And if they want to track a new OEM, I get that. You want more OEMs in the sport, the better. Completely understandable. And I don't know the insides and outs of NASCAR. I'm just giving my opinion, but we've been cutting horsepower again for 10 years. And even if we do get a new OEM, it's going to take them another 2 or 3 years just to get into the sport. I think the only way OEMs are going to want to be invested into NASCAR is if they go hybrid. It makes no sense, I think, for an OEM, let's say Honda, to say, all right, we're going to get into NASCAR next year. I'm just throwing an example. In 2025, to then build for 1 year an ICE engine or internal combustion engine, and then the next year start building a hybrid. It makes no sense. I think it's going to take until we get a couple years into the hybrid era of NASCAR for any OEMs to come out. That's why I don't understand why we continue to cut horsepower. If NASCAR had a plan saying, hey, look, with the hybrid engine, we're going to, be giving out so much horsepower, then fine. At least there's a game plan. At least there's something down the line. But we hear nothing. We know nothing. We're just thinking, are we just never going to have that high horsepower at all? Or we're just going to keep cutting and cutting horsepower? Because remember, with the next gen car, NASCAR wanted to even limit the horsepower even more to 510. And it wasn't until the teams and drivers begged NASCAR not to do that. I don't understand NASCAR's infatuation with keep cutting horsepower, since one of the things that we love about NASCAR is the speed, breaking records, qualifying. Qualifying with high horsepower is so much fun to watch. You cutting that just makes qualifying just seem like it's another event. Doesn't feel like a spectacle anymore. Hearing that high revving, just noise breaking horsepower just fly by through the racetrack, that's gone. Don't get me wrong, the engines, they sound really good, but it could be so much better. I know you have to think about the bottom line, which is the money. I get that, but engine bills aren't going down. All the OEMs are saying we can add some horsepower back. Why not give it a try? Just add in 100 horsepower. Let's see what happens. If you have the tire that you work with now, with how low the downforce is now, add in 100 horsepower. Let's just try it out. Let's see how it goes. You're willing to try out as many different types of aero packages, try out as many different types of tires, but not once are you willing to try and just say, let's see the engine. How does 100 horsepower, or how does unrestricted not 100 horsepower? So then, okay, you can have a baseline as, okay, this can work. How do we make it so that it's cost effective now? Instead of just thinking, oh, it could, it might, I don't know, we'll never try it. I just think that if NASCAR wants to get more OEMs in the sport, they have to focus less on the actual costs and more on how to make the sport bigger. Again, I look at Formula One. Formula One is getting more expensive than ever, yet you're seeing more engine suppliers want to enter the sport. I mentioned Ford already. I forgot to also mention Cadillac, with Andretti, maybe they might get into sport. I don't know, but Cadillac wants to get into F1. You're now seeing Audi. More engine suppliers want to get into F1. Why? Because the sport is growing and growing and growing. The reason why Honda is considering leaving IndyCar is because the sport isn't growing. It's just meddling. It's just being steady, staying afloat, just doing whatever, yet the cost keeps rising up and they're not getting an ROI. I think if NASCAR wants to get more OEMs in the sport, they have to make the ROI worth it for new engine suppliers. If the sport is growing, if NASCAR is growing, yeah, the cost may go up, but if the sport is growing, if they're getting more and more fans better than ever, OEMs are going to start pouring in as much money as they can because they want to be a part of the hype. So I don't like this one-dimensional mindset that NASCAR has as, oh, if we cut money, if we save money, OEMs are in. It's like, yeah, you could do that, but that should not be the only thing. It's that plus A, B, C, D. In the meantime, while we're getting ready for the hybrid engines, why not try something out in the last few years of the combustion engines? And that's all I ask with NASCAR is to try. Just try it out. 770, 750 horsepower. Try it out. That's all I ask is try it out.